Tonight on the show, Trump calls Putin crazy after Russia's largest attack on Ukraine. Over 350 drones and nearly a dozen cruise missiles rained down on Ukrainian cities, injuring civilians and killing at least 12 people. What way is the Russia-Ukraine war heading? Good evening, you are watching TKC World, where we make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. Also on the show, India has officially overtaken Japan to become the world's fourth largest economy. The question is, how did India beat Japan's economy? Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, a political storm is brewing and the clock may be ticking for Nobel Laureate Muhammad Yunus. The question is, will Yunus resign and will the Bangladesh army chief crown himself as the leader of the country? And finally, why is King Charles opening Canada's parliament himself? Is this a royal symbolism or a political strategy? All this is lined up. Let's get started. Waking up to the sounds of air raid sirens, that's the new normal in Ukraine, where between Sunday night and Monday morning, the country faced its largest drone and missile attack since the war began. Over 350 drones and nearly a half dozen cruise missiles rained down on Ukrainian cities, injuring civilians and killing at least 12 people. The entire regions were under threat and the skies lit up with the explosions. But the shock waves weren't limited to Ukraine. It reached across the Atlantic, straight to New Jersey, where US President Donald Trump, in a rare and fiery public rebuke of Russian President Vladimir Putin, said something no one would have ever expected. He said, and I quote, "What the hell happened to him? He is killing a lot of people." And then he doubled down, calling Putin has gone absolutely crazy. This is significant. Trump has long claimed he gets along with Putin, but this was different. Trump seemed genuinely rattled. He admitted he is not happy with Putin and is now considering new sanctions on Russia. The Kremlin did not ignore the jab. Putin's spokesperson brushed off the comments as emotional overload from everyone involved. But in the very same breath, he said Russia was grateful to President Donald Trump for quote-unquote helping to organize peace talks. Confused? Welcome to 21st century diplomacy. And here is the twist. Even as Trump criticized Putin, he also went after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He said Zelensky is doing his country no favors, adding, everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. It was a slap on both sides, Russia for the violence and Ukraine for the tone. So where does this leave us? Just last week, Trump and Putin reportedly held a 2 hours long phone call to discuss a potential ceasefire. Trump claims it went very well and that both Ukraine and Russia would immediately start peace negotiations. Ukraine has publicly agreed to a 30-day ceasefire, but Putin, he is only committed to working on a memorandum, a vague document on a possible future peace, not exactly reassuring. Meanwhile, Kiev isn't impressed. Zelensky slammed Russia's brutal drone barrage as a sign of total impunity and accused President Trump of silence of encouraging Putin. Ukraine is urging the US to impose tougher sanctions and to pressure Moscow harder into a ceasefire. And back in Washington, the Trump administration has stayed mostly quiet, saying it still hopes to broker peace, but warns that if there is no progress, it might walk away from talks altogether. In the background, Russia still controls about 20% of Ukraine, including Crimea, and despite last week's prisoner swap and Istanbul hosted talks, the truth is there is very little actual movement towards peace. So here we are, the most brutal attack of the war, Trump breaking ranks and calling Putin crazy, and the world stuck between air raid sirens and the diplomatic smoke signals. The war isn't just about borders anymore, it's about broken trust, shifting loyalties, and leaders losing patience. India has just passed the massive milestone. We have officially overtaken Japan to become the world's fourth largest economy, a 4 trillion economic giant. That's right, India now ranks behind only the US, China, and Germany, according to International Monetary Fund data cited by Niti Aayog CEO BVR Subramaniam. It is a big moment, but what does it really mean? Let's break it down. For context, just 15 years ago, Japan's economy was nearly 6 trillion US dollars. It was the envy of the world, but today it has shrunk to around $4.18 trillion, plagued by an aging population, low productivity, and decades of deflation. India, meanwhile, has doubled its nominal GDP in just a decade, surging from the fifth to the fourth largest economy. We are a 4 trillion economy as I speak, said Subramaniam at a recent press meet. This isn't my data, it's IMF's. India is now larger than Japan. He is not stopping there. Subramaniam predicts that within next 2 to 3 years, India could leapfrog Germany and become the third largest economy globally. And that is a really big thing. According to the IMF's World Economic Outlook, India's economy is projected to grow at 6.2% in 2025 and 6.3% in 26, far ahead of global averages. For context, the world is expected to grow at just 2.8% next year. By 2028, India is forecasted to hit 5.58 trillion, enough to overtake Germany. So what's powering this growth? It is India's demographic dividend, a young, growing and increasingly skilled population, a booming service sector, rapid digital infrastructure, and a government push for Viksit Bharat or developed nation by 2027. Subramaniam puts it clearly, India is at a takeoff stage. What we do in next 25 years will define our global standing for next 100. But here is where the debate begins. Critics are quick to point out India's per capita GDP is still low, and they are not wrong. At around $2,400, India ranks below countries like Kenya, Morocco, and South Africa. Some say this makes India's rise overstated, but others disagree strongly. Policy strategist Siddharth put it bluntly, India isn't catching up, it's overtaking. He argues that looking at per capita GDP alone is misleading for a country of 1.4 billion people. Instead, India should be measured by its scale, momentum, and strategic impact. He said, and I quote, per capita grew 9.2% in 2023, faster than most of Europe. You don't measure a giant like India with boutique measures. This argument isn't new. When China surged past Japan and Europe in the early 2000s, skeptics made the same argument. But what about per capita? Today, China is the second largest economy and a global major power despite its still moderate per capita income. So that is not a problem. Of course, challenges remain. India must boost capital formation, currently at 24%, to over 32% to sustain 8% plus growth rates like Japan and China once did. And even optimistically, it would take 2 decades to match Japan's per capita level if Japan stagnates and India keeps growing steadily. So is India rich yet? Not quite, but is it rising? Absolutely. India's story is no longer about catching up, it's about shaping the global economy with strategic weight, a massive market, and growing geopolitical influence. India is not just in the race, it is moving in the very front. In Bangladesh, a political storm is brewing and the clock may be ticking for the Nobel Laureate Muhammad Yunus. Appointed as the interim chief advisor to steer Bangladesh towards election, Yunus now finds himself surrounded by growing unrest, frustrated allies, and a military that seems done waiting. The latest twist, Bangladesh's powerful army chief General Waqar-uz-Zaman is reportedly losing his patience over Yunus. According to a very senior intelligence source, he is not interested in waiting until June for the elections as initially planned. Instead, he is now exploring all possible legal and not so legal avenues to push Yunus out and take charge of the process himself. This behind the scene power struggle has been simmering for weeks and weeks now, but now the signs are becoming more and more evident, more and more public. Zaman has been attending high-level officer meetings, flexing military muscle in subtle ways. Sources say he is questioning the very legal foundation of Yunus's administration altogether. The Constitution of Bangladesh mandates that elections must be held within 90 days of a government dissolution. 90 days. And yet, Yunus's transitional government seems to be stretching the timeline of supposed 90 days. And Zaman is not the only one raising eyebrows. Former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has unleashed a fierce attack on Muhammad Yunus, accusing him of quote-unquote selling out the nation to the United States and calling his interim government quote-unquote militant-led and unconstitutional. Her party, the Awami League, was banned just weeks ago, a move that sparked widespread political instability and street-level unrest. Yunus, for his part, is clearly feeling the pressure, and we all can see it. In a recent meeting with 20 political parties, he admitted that Bangladesh is now facing quote-unquote a war-like situation both internally and externally. He also expressed deep frustrations and hinted at stepping down if he fails to organize a free and fair election. He said, and I quote, "If I fail to hold elections, I will feel guilty," and that is an unusual emotional statement for someone often seen as calm and collected person. But things may be slipped from his hand. The military reportedly believes delaying elections any further violates constitutional norms, the very foundation of the constitution. Some insiders say that General Zaman is even pressuring President Muhammad to evoke Article 58. This is the article which allows the president to declare a state of emergency if the constitutional order in the country in Bangladesh breaks down. Should that happen, Yunus could be ousted swiftly and elections might be called much sooner than planned initially. Zaman, meanwhile, is rallying for support of Bangladesh's Navy and Air Force, making it clear that he has the backing to take decision and decisive actions in the country Bangladesh. He's also said to be working quietly to unite the parties of Hasina and her long-time rival Zia to form an electoral front, especially sidelining Yunus. This all comes as Yunus warns of foreign meddling, rising militancy, and collapse of national unity in Bangladesh. But his credibility is sinking with every passing day. What began as an interim solution is now turning into a crisis of legitimacy. As Yunus tries to hang on, the military is no longer hiding its intentions. The power shift may be closer than ever in Bangladesh, and in Bangladesh the countdown has begun. The only question is, who will cross the finish line first? Picture this: Trump's blaring red carpets, rolling guards standing in perfect rows, and in the heart of it all, King Charles III and Queen Camilla stepping into the Canadian soil. No, it's not a royal tour. This is something far more political. For the first time ever since his coronation, King Charles is in Canada, and on Tuesday he will do something no king has ever done before: open Canada's parliament by delivering the speech from the throne himself. That is right, this isn't just a ceremonial wave and smile visit. The king is taking a highly symbolic step into Canada's political spotlight. Now, I know you have few questions, like you might be wondering, what is this quote-unquote speech from the throne? And why does it matter? Well, the speech from the throne is Canada's official kickoff to a new session of parliament, just like the presidential speech that we have here in India. No bills, no debate, no vote can happen until it's delivered. Normally, this speech is read by the Governor General, who represents the monarch in Canada, who represents King Charles in Canada. But this time, Prime Minister Mark Carney, the newly elected Prime Minister, I should say, has invited King Charles to do it himself. Something that hasn't happened in nearly half a century, in nearly 50 years. In fact, the last time a monarch gave the speech was in 1977 when Queen Elizabeth II addressed Parliament, and before that 1957. So yes, this is a rare and historic moment. Carney's decision to invite the king wasn't just about nostalgia or the ceremony. It was a political strategy. Understand this: Canada's relationship with the United States is currently rocky. US President Donald Trump, still an influential voice in American politics and the global politics, has mocked Canada as the 51st state and belittled past leaders. In this tense climate, Kane wants to make a bold statement. And what is the statement? The statement is that Canada is sovereign, independent, and proud country. And what better way to show that than by having the king, not an American president, open parliament? Kane said, "This is an historic honor that matches the weight of our times." The king and the queen landed in Ottawa on Monday to a full royal welcome, military honors, tree planting, and cultural showcases of Canada's diverse identity. They will also meet Indigenous leaders and take part in symbolic events at Rideau Hall and the National War Memorial. And then comes the main event. On Tuesday morning at 11, the king will reach the throne speech, laying out Kane's legislative priorities and vision for the country, for Canada. While King Charles doesn't interfere in politics, that is not in the very structure of king, he's been quietly sending signals of support to Canada, from wearing Canada's medals to planting maple trees to sitting on a Canadian chair during Commonwealth services. His gestures, his actions haven't gone unnoticed in the world. This visit, with all its pomp and power, is a reinforcement of the enduring ties between Canada and the Crown, or I should say Canada and Charles. In a world of shifting alliances and rising uncertainty, King Charles' visit may be more than just a tradition. It is Canada's way of reminding the world where it still stands and who still stands with Canada. And today's viral video is from Vietnam. French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in Vietnam and got a little surprise from his own wife. A video went viral showcasing Brigitte Macron gently pushing his face as they stepped off the plane. The question is, was she fixing his looks? Was she annoyed? No one's sure. Macron looked surprised but quickly smiled and waved. His team first said the video wasn't real until they had to admit it was real, and then Macron later laughed it off, saying, "We were just joking like we always do." So no drama, just a very French welcome to Asia, love jokes, and maybe a little bit of sass on the runway. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight, dear viewers. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, take care and a good night.